Just trying to. Hey, Robert, thank you for joining. I scheduled this previously, but that link didn't work, so I'm starting a fresh link here. Hey, Tracy, thanks for joining. Asfak, thanks for joining. I have to send this link to Brandon so he can join. So give me a second here. Do you mind sharing what you're wearing today? Your center today? Hey, Will, thanks for joining. We're just waiting for Brandon. Give me a second here. What was he wearing yesterday, Ashfaq? Dua Impresario, Jaglev. So I think you like Shipper fragrances then. Whoa, Vivian, thanks for joining. Will is saying Saturday is Tom Yum by Persona. Yeah, I need to still need to figure out a way to sample his stuff. He has so many lines or brands. I'm still struggling to decide which brand to start with. So Will, let me know which one, which line you recommend starting with. Let's see if Brandon can join. Oh, okay. So where is he? All right. Robert is wearing Mandy. I felt Antique Ambergris. That's an amazing scent. Is close to the skin, but I do enjoy that. Like a really cool ambergris, if I remember correctly, type of scent that you can layer with other stuff. On my skin though, I didn't get a good longevity. It did remain close to the skin, but I did enjoy the smell. And then when I layer with other stuff that are lighter, it just exalts it. Let's see, how do I invite Brendan here? Pop-up chat. L'Heure d'Or by Sultan Pasha. That sounds interesting. Is that a recent one? Diploma said thank you. Hey, gunmetal, yes. So the stream that and the question is, I thought the Brandon Oz chat is happening now. Yes, I'm waiting for him to join so I can see how I can add him to the stream. I don't see the option here. This is my first time actually doing a live, like a join live chat. So he should be able to request to join, but I don't even see him in the chat here. And I was just asking people to share their scent of the day. Franco is saying Musk Ravageur. I need to revisit that. I tried that early on during my fragrance journey, and I did not like it. So I need to go back and try it now that I've tried a lot more stuff, and then I'm into more daring or obscure stuff. Okay, give me a second here. Let me see if I can call Brendan. There. And Ajmal Amber Magic. That's new. I've not tried that. Okay, so let me go back. Apparently, Brendan is in the chat here. Can't see it. Channel number 19. Stump down. Okay, that sounds interesting. I've not tried that yet. Brendan, where's therapeutic? Oh, right here. Just saw it. How do I get so? Hold on a second here. YouTube. Dedicated. Does anybody know how to add somebody to a live chat in this YouTube platform? Should be as easy as double like clicking on the three button option there and then asking the person to join, but I don't see that here. Really? Fragrance Journey is saying I can't add anybody here. That's interesting. What? Hold on, give me a second here. Very clear. All right. So okay. So we'll have to find a way to. Is there a way to go? Like whatever. Yeah, exactly. Brendan, I'm trying to do that, but apparently I can't add you. I've seen other people do, unless they're using a third-party tool to do that within YouTube, which is insane. Okay. All right. Okay. Okay. Here you go. Let me see. So maybe I need to send that to him. Good. Brendan, I added a link there. I don't know if there's a way for you to join through that. Otherwise, I'll have to postpone it or try to switch platforms here. Let's see, StreamYard. Fragrance Journey is saying StreamYard is easier. I'll try that, yeah. Okay. Okay, yeah, it seems like there's no straightforward way to do that. That's kind of insane. All right. Okay, so let me talk to Brennan and see if he wants us to reschedule this one so we can talk about the same topic. And then today we can just do a short stream here, and then talk about random stuff, and then get back to the vintage stuff later. Vintage stuff. Thanks, Frank's Journey. StreamYard. Brandon, let me know when you click on that link there. Does it give you an option to join? Yeah, Fragrance Journey. Yes, Robert. The other Robert needs a YouTube channel or some type of reviewing outlet there. He is really knowledgeable. So he smells like Rome is asking, have you tried any of the Kriegler fragrances? I've not tried anything from that line yet. From what I'm hearing, some of the ouds are really good, well done. Hey, hello, Dylan. Thanks for joining. I saw Vivian join too. Thanks for joining. And then for anybody in the chat here, before when I was, well, I'm still learning about perfumery, but when I was starting and I didn't know much about perfuming, I watched their channel a lot. So, Alora Dylan, if you want to go subscribe to them, if you're interested in learning a bit about perfumery and then even individual notes and stuff like that, they're really fun to watch. So go check out their channel. Okay, so Brendan is saying we're all good. I think this is the best format to talk about these kind of topics. I would love to see what you have. Okay, so yeah, I can go through. So Brendan, I think part one, um, I'm going to ask a set of questions, and then hopefully people can chime in, and then I can show you what I have in terms of vintage perfumes, and then after that, the second part is going to be on Brendan's channel, and then we can go into like in details about some of our favorites, and then you guys can share with us too what you found really interesting as a vintage fragrance, and then we can, at least for me, it will be a good learning opportunity to see if there's anything out there that I've not tried that might be interesting from you guys. So today, let's do part one. And then, so the first question that I have is for people that are here, what do you consider a vintage fragrance? I don't take the term really, how to say that, seriously. I tend to think about it in terms of like a fragrance that has been reformulated several times to the point where it's not recognizable, or talking about the first formula. I will refer to that as vintage, or something that I associate with older people that I've worn it when I was younger, things like that. Some other people think that vintage needs to be associated with the age of the fragrance, so 20, 30 years or more. So I'm curious to see what you guys think classifies as a vintage fragrance. Is it a smell, age? Do you take it seriously? Like the term, I mean. It's a question that I've been asking myself for a long time, but I've not come to like a satisfactory definition there. So I decided to not take too seriously and then just have my own definition around that. I think innate. Okay, age perfume. Vivian is saying yeah, that makes sense. So Robert Finland is saying I don't take the term too seriously, but one way I use it It is what isn't in trend right now. Yep. Okay. So that nostalgia type of feel, and I can agree with that. It is part of what I think too. Vintage can be defined as. So Vivian is saying over 30 years. Okay. Yep. That's valid as well. Lorzel is saying, I believe that vintage, in my opinion, is synonymous with uh, classification. I can see that. Gunmetal says it is age for him as well. So with that question though, so if you're saying age, and then you're taking a fragrance that was created this year, for example, but has characteristics of what was worn in the 80s, for example, will you classify that as a vintage smelling um, fragrance, or you don't associate the smell with if something is vintage or not? Because a part of my definition sometimes is I'll say something is vintage because the scent profile that were created back then are much different than nowadays, where it is much more cleaner. Okay, so gunmetal, I will agree with that. I'll call it vintage inspired, yes, rather than calling it vintage. That's a good answer, gunmetal. Allure Dylan is agreeing with gunmetal there. Vintage inspired, yes. Robert is saying as associate vintage with fragrances pre-IFRA. Okay, so that's a good point, Robert. IFRA regulation that were made with natural ingredient and some potentially carcinogenic substances like nitro musks. So and then that's actually Robert, you're leading into some of the next questions that I have there. So I'm going to come back to your answer there, but it kind of feeds into why sometime I'll wait and then get a vintage fragrance. So Will is saying, I feel vintage is often a term to classify a certain quality of fragrance that has been missing as of late. Yes, I can see that tying into Robert's answer. And then Robert Quinlan is saying, I would call it an updated interpretation of vintage inspired scent. Okay, but I agree with everyone else. Okay, those are really good questions. So it seems like age, not and then type of fragrances that have been created before, but not to the same extent nowadays. I know there are so many Roberts here. Indeed. So Ashfaq is saying vintage things that arcs back, okay, to the past for me at least. So Ashfaq is saying 40 to 50 years. And then some ouds. That's a really old fragrances. That can be confusing. It's like Robert, and then three people will be like, okay, who are you referring to here? Okay. All right. So and then so leading to the second question then is why do you look for vintage fragrances? Is it for nostalgia? Um, do you associate better qualities with vintage fragrances? Why are you like for people that do here? Why do you go after the pain of looking for vintage fragrances? For me, is mostly if I'm looking for fragrance that I've tried the recent formulation, and I heard that the previous formulation contained a lot of oak moss, for example. I really love the note of oak moss, so I will go to the extent of looking for the vintage formula that contains the oak moss before IFRA. So Robert, that's what I was referring to when I was reading your question there. And then sometime for nostalgia to remind me of other people uh, that I grew up around, other adults that I grew up around. Or if I'm looking for something that is abrasive, natural smelling, I'll go back to some of the vintage. So I'm curious to know for people that are interested in vintage fragrances, why? What's your reason? Is it to say some people collect it just to say that they have vintage, and then the rest of the world does not have access to it. So I don't know if I'll call that for prestige or whatever for collecting, but I'm curious to know why you'll go for a vintage fragrance over uh, a new formula that you have more chances of it being good. And that will lead into my third question. Oh, Diploma said you're in Minnesota. We have St. Paul, actually. Yes. I meet with Alex from time to time, so we'll have to hang out when you have the time. That'd be cool. I thought I was the only one in Minnesota, this cold place, but apparently not. That's good. So sometimes smell says to my nose, as a general rule, they simply smell better. Okay, yep. Some of the fragrances that I have here, type of citruses that they're using, the aromatics that they're using, and all that, it does smell natural. Um, to some degree, a little bit more challenging and artsy out there compared to nowadays, where it is much cleaner. Um, so yeah. Um, Robert Quinlan is saying, oh, that just jumped. Where I like to experience something from a time gone. By that, I never experienced the same way I visit historic sites and watch old movies. Yes, those type of scents can take you back to that time, and then that's part of the reason why I collect some of the vintages. It does remind me of uncles or my mom or their friends, and then my dad. So that is definitely a good reason. Brandon is saying, okay, this is scrolling real fast. For me, the reason I chase down certain bottles is to capture the smell of a year, decade, people from my life. Even not wearing them, it is cool to pick them up and smell these memories. Yes, I can agree with you, Brendan from Therapeutic Fragrances. And then uh, I'm sure most of you know who Brendan is. His YouTube channel is Therapeutic Fragrances, and he loves really artsy type of fragrances. He reviews indie fragrances as well. He's in there for the passion and the craft. So if you go and then look at his channel, you're going to see a lot of interesting reviews there. I would say we're about the same in terms of taste, and then what we look for in terms of fragrances. Okay. Okay, Ashfaq, I missed your answer. Give me a second here. Let me go back up. Uh, okay. Vintage things that, okay, yeah, I already read that 40 to 50 years. Okay, I see you're referring to the age thing. Capture, okay. So Vivian is saying, I think I will look for actual age fragrances to compare the differences of how perfume were created back then. Yes, Vivian, that's actually a really good reason to get some of the vintage fragrances. It is interesting how you can compare something that was done back then, see the evolution over time, restrictions that were put in place, and then smell a current version and see that they're completely different. That's really interesting to study. For me also, the other thing that I really like about it is to see the trend and evolution in how companies are shifting the audience that they're catering to. So more and more right now, we tend to say, like a lot of people that have been in this perfume hobby for a long time, will tend to say that nowadays fragrances do not have a soul. But I think the real reason behind it is because they're catering to a progressively changing audience. Some of the younger folks, I'm sure, will not like to smell like some of these vintage fragrances. So for to be able to sell in masses and to the new or next wave of people that would be able to afford their fragrances, they have to adapt to today's tastes. But it's interesting to see that trend and change there. So Laura Dillon says vintage tends to be unique, Almost niche, yes. Some of the vintage fragrances that I'm going to be sharing shortly, to me, they smell like niche of today. So 20 years ago, there were about 350 fragrances on the market. Now we're drowning in, yeah, in fragrances to choose from. Yes, too many choices today. Definitely. Some of the vintage fragrances have like really interesting structures or smell, and then now some of them I'll classify as niche. They were meant. Okay, so Franco is saying that's an interesting one, just for trying to get the creations in the way that they were meant. So how they were supposed to smell that back then. Nowadays, many notes are made to smell like something from before, but it's simply not the original thing. I can see that. Gunmetal, for me, it is a 50. Whoa, that's just jumped. Where are you? Okay, so for Gunmetal says, for me, is a 50-50. Some vintage smell better than the current formulation, yes. Some I actually like the current version as much as the vintage. It's a case by case. I agree with that. And then that's another question or a topic that I want to tackle in a little bit there. So Tracy says, comfort and sense. I haven't got any vintage and was curious about this topic. In my latest perfume swap, my friend sent me Chanel 19 and 22 vintage and Shalimar. I did buy Dior Addict a while back to smell it with oak moss. So Tracy, I'm wondering, did you end up liking the Shalimar? Do you have the latest version? What did you think about the differences, or did you even see a difference? DK Albright is saying, okay, wearing Gucci Envy. I need to try that thing. I've not tried that yet, but a lot of people are raving about it. So hopefully I can get a bottle of it at some point for a good price because after looking online, it was the pricing was kind of crazy. Diplomaset is saying the Polo Green vintage I picked up is much better than the current formulation. I think it contains real oak moss. Yes, and I can see that with some of the IFRA restrictions there. Well, to expand on what Alora said, I love the complexity of vintage fragrances. Notes on notes on notes. Yes, I'll have to agree with that. Okay. Okay, so Rich Mitch is suggesting something small tool. I think Mr. Smelly did review that one, I believe, and he did like it, so I might try that as well. Okay, so I previously I asked why do you go for vintage fragrances? So the follow-up question is, do you think it is worth uh, going after vintage fragrances? For me, it is not always the case. I try to sample the current formula first to see if I love it, and if I love it, then I can find the vintage. If I love the current formula and I don't want to spend too much time or money chasing the vintage, I just stick with the current formula. So, do you have a rule of thumb when you're hunting for vintages? And do you think that is always worth going to the first formulation? DK Albright saying, yes, Gucci Envy. I gave an almost full bottle away back before I knew about discontinuation and reformulation. Yeah. Yeah. I bet the person is happy though. So you've made one person happy. So that's a good thing. Um, that's the positive side of that story I'm taking out of it, I guess. Aging quite a bit has been building a collection from a knowledge modern and they will not age like the natural counterpart. Into okay, so he smells like Rome. Great YouTube channel as well. He put me onto Boadicea the Victorious when I first started my journey. I never looked back from that house. Uh, So if you're not following him, please do. And he says, I do want to dive into vintage fragrances. I find them intriguing as long as they don't trigger an association with someone old or something uncomfortable. I can see that. The thing is, most people will associate some of the vintage fragrances to something that is old smelling because of the association or other people wearing around them when they were younger. To you, it might seem modern or still wearable, but to some degree, at least in my experience, most people that have smelled those on me tend to tell me that I smelled like their grandma's house or a grandpa or something like that. But most of the time, I don't really care about that. As long as I'm not offending, it's not too loud and in other people's space, I just wear it. Okay, so Robert is saying, I think it's worth looking for it, but when prices are hyperinflated beyond reason, it becomes unreasonable. Yes, I will have to agree with that. And Gunmetal also says that he can uh, he feels the same way about it too. I was looking for a fragrance from the House of Rocha. It's called Makassar, and the cheapest I've seen it online is like 300, and I don't want to pay that much money for it. So I ended up just backing off of it. But yeah, sometimes the pricing is just insane. At that point, it is not worth it. I will have to agree with that. So Will is asking, what are your thoughts on Arish Ledore Antiquity, modern perfume utilizing very old vintage components? Yes. So I did not pull the trigger fast enough on Antiquity, so I kind of regret that. But it's a really well done fragrance, vintage inspired. But the type of material that they're using, like you said, they're aged. So I'm not sure the component that went into it. I would say a big majority of them are aged. So would you call that fragrance a vintage fragrance or a vintage inspired? I would say by some of the rules that I've seen here, most people would think that is vintage inspired, even though the materials have been aged for quite a long time. Because I'm guessing some of the components are not aged. But I think it's a beautiful interpretation of what a vintage fragrance smells like. Fuller, much rounder than some of the vintage fragrances. So it's a really good interpretation. Well, did you end up picking up a bottle of Antiquity? Well, it was greener, a bit more earthy, and very spicy. So Tracy says the vintage Shalimar sample smells greener, a bit more earthy, and very spicy. So yeah, again, it depends on what you like. You might love the current formulation better than the older one. So Laura Dillon is responding to therapeutic Brandon here. They're talking about naturals and how it ages, and then some of the synthetics that are being used nowadays. Which, by the way, synthetics are not bad. They're not bad as what people might think. But I guess that will be a topic for another day. But it's saying when using naturals, there are so many aroma chemicals in natural materials that are trying uh, to guesstimate its synergy result comes with experimenting. Yes. So to kind of comment on Aller Dillon comment here, playing with naturals versus synthetics. Some of the synthetics are stable. So if you study them from top to bottom, you know how they open and how they dry down. You can anticipate how they're going to mix in a composition. When you're working with naturals, because there are so many components in it, it is sometimes hard to know how it will interact with other things and then what the end result will be like. So it does really take a lot of time to experiment, wait, especially waiting period to wait and then see how it ages and how the final result comes off as before you deem yourself knowledgeable enough in some of the natural ingredients. So definitely interesting, but it takes a lot of time to get used to those. So Tracy says, I'm interested in trying samples, but like hoping nothing, yep, grabs me to want them at those vintage prices. Yes, some of the pricing, most of the pricing, once some of the fragrances get tagged with a vintage name, although they're not vintage in some cases, the prices just go off the roof there. So I can understand that. So DK Albright says, I used to wear Byman from Rocha, and I believe that's the name Coffee-ish Smell. Oh, I don't know that one. The Byman that was this by DNG. Whoa, Eugene, how you doing? Thanks for joining. 50-year-old sale. So Robert Quinlan is saying I got a bottle of Shalimar that's 50-year-old for only 10 euros. Those are the finds that you're proud of, you you can boast about, because yeah, that's a good price there. So Will is saying, I did not grab a bottle of antiquity. I appreciate the creativity of making a new fragrance utilizing very aged materials. However, it was kind of muddled on my skin and didn't change noticeably. Oh, I can understand that. I have my sample. I tried it once. I thought it was beautiful. So I didn't study it quite well or extensively yet, but I can see when you're using too many natural materials around the same type of percentage, your fragrance at the end can come off muddled. But yeah, I'll try to wear that. I've been avoiding wearing it because I don't want to be bitter because I missed something. But I guess I will wear it to see, at least to study the structure of it. Check out Martin, one of the few places that carries this in fragrance. So, oh, Diploma said yes. I've not been to that shop yet, but I'll make sure I do that very soon. I know we don't have options in Minnesota here when it comes to good fragrance shops, so that would be an interesting one to go to. All right. So I think we can move on to the. So the other question for those who have experienced it, do you have a fragrance that you've tried the current formulation and loved it better than the vintage? For me, let me see if I can find it. Okay, so for me, for example, this thing here is the vintage Bel Ami by Hermes. I bought that first without sampling some of the current offerings, and then I ended up getting recently Bel Ami Vetiver. Uh, and I think this is really well done. So if I had this or the regular Bel Ami, the current formula, I think I would not have gone for the shaker bottle here, which is kind of expensive. So this is one example where I would have been just fine using the Bel Ami Vetiver or just the Bel Ami, and then not getting this one because this one did cost me a bit there. The other example that I have is not that is expensive, but Heritage by Guerlain here. This is one of the older bottle styles. But then if you compare it to the newer one here, I love the current formula better because it's a lot spicier, a lot more like refined than what I get out of this one here. So I prefer this one in most cases. I do enjoy this formula here, but then I enjoy this one a lot uh, better. So I'm curious to know if anybody has a case like that where they found out that they love the current formula better than the old one. Let me see if I can catch up with the comments here. Let's see. All right. Okay, I think at this point then I can okay. I see a discussion about Lucaturin. I'll have to catch up on those. It's like, last one. Okay, skin chemistry. Hey, Mr. Miami Cuddles, thanks for joining. And thanks for trying my fragrances. Um, Thanks for the feedback. That was really motivating to hear. So let me see. I'm curious to know what is going on about skin chemistry, and then look at Turin here. So same. So DK Albright is asking. Some say there is no such thing as body chemistry and how fragrance interacts on skin. I I've experienced that before. Actually, before I started collecting fragrances, I used to wear Terre d'Hermes uh, a lot when I was in college. I went through several bottles, and then one day I decided to switch it up a little bit. I went to the store and I got one of the Bulgari Aqua, the bottle that looks like a drop of water. I don't remember exactly which one it was. I sprayed on my skin, and it was stinking. I had a friend that was there with me, and then he wore it, and then on his skin, I did not get the same effect that I got on my skin. I ended up hating it, and I went straight back to Terre d'Hermes because I was scared of trying anything new. But at that point, I didn't even check to see if the rumors or quote unquote differences in skin chemistry was true. I just decided to just go back to Terre d'Hermes because that was working for me. And then fast forward a couple of years later, now that I test things. So the way I do reviews, I'll wear the fragrance, I'll test it on myself, and I'll wait for reactions from people around me. But mostly it's going to be my wife, parents, and then my kids. And I'll have her wear it, and then just on a weekend where I'm home, so that I can study it from a distance as well. And then sometimes some of the facets on her skin are more emphasized than on my skin. Sometimes on my skin I get a little bit more aromatic tones, and then on hers I will get something that is powdery, completely different. You get the same structure or smell, but then with different variation and what you get more of. So I would say, at least on my skin or in my experience, skin chemistry is real. I'm curious to know what other people thought about that. Uh, Ingredient. So Alora Dylan, yes. Your own body chemistry is the final ingredient to every fragrance, and I'll agree with that. Will is saying, I respect Turin, but raise an eyebrow on many of his opinions. So yeah, I would say the I think he's just well, he has credibility, but he's just another reviewer. He's sharing his opinion based on his taste. There's no way he can be unbiased. We all have preferences, and then I'm sure some of the fragrances that he's trying, he's seeing that through his own lens. So when he says something sucks, for example, I don't typically take it too seriously. If I don't like it, it's a coincidence that we are agreeing we have the same experience. But if not, then it's just his experience there. But I think the reason why people go after him is because he's so confident about saying that something sucks without backing why it sucks for him. In most cases, it doesn't even say that he doesn't like it or it sucks because of this. So it comes across as he's saying is a definitive opinion. It sucks. So I think that's why people go after him, I guess. But I think his comments or ratings as his own interpretation of the sentence, and I have mine. Um, there. Okay, so we're gonna show what I have here, and then again, at the beginning of the live, I did ask what people what was your definition when it comes to something that is vintage or not. So it's gonna vary a little bit depending on what I'm showing here. So keep that in mind. So this one here, I don't want to go one by one. I guess I can just show them because I want to do the live later on with Brandon. He has a lot of good fragrances to talk about. I'd love to get his opinion on some of the fragrances there. So I guess I'm just going to show what I have here, and then on the set of part two, we're going to make sure that we can do a live with two people on his channel, and then go from there. So I have Byman here. Let me move stuff here. by Dolce and Gabbana. I love this thing here. Really green floral scent. Essence by Givenchy. And this here that is not really talked about is called Giorgio Beverly. And then this one is called, what is it called? There's a tag pour on, but is the extraordinaire version right here. And then one of my favorites, I have many backup bottles of these one because I was able to find them for a good price. This one is Monsieur Rochat. And then they have the, what is it? The concentrated version as well. I have that somewhere. And I have Nina Ricci Filia. And then I have Kuros. I'm still trying to find my backup bottle of Kuros here. So this is one of the vintage version, a splash. I have the fresher version here. I have a Safari Ralph Lauren. This one is the Cosmere version here. Then I have this beautiful presentation from Cartier. And this one is Santos de Cartier. Then in this abrasive, aromatic, leather-like type of smell from the House of Moschino, this is Vice Versa. And then Moustache, Eau de Cologne by Orsha here. And then I have the older versions of YSL Rive Gauche. This is the regular version, EDT, I believe. And then this one is the intense or concentrated version. And these are over time, though. I took my time and then got those. And this one is the Gucci, Pour the original. Then Paco Rabanne Pour one of the older bottles. This is for Rich, a loader for men. This is the cologne version here. Fantastic fragrance. I think it's still modern. I don't find it to be too old. Okay, so this is the Monsieur de Rochat, the concentré version, which is I really enjoy. And then Bala Versailles, I know a lot of people think that this one is just like too animalic and stuff like that. I don't find it. I really enjoy it. And then these are just two of the versions here. This is the Eau de Cologne and this is the Parfum de Toilette. This is an interesting concentration that he had there. Opium Eau de Toilette here. And then this one, not really talked about, is Nina Ricci Club. Fruity floral with aldehydes, really good for the spring season. Oh, another question that I forgot to ask here. How do you hunt for vintage fragrances? For me, for example, because of pricing and all that, I'll read a lot on Base Note, and then there's another blog. It's called Raiders of Lost Scent, I believe, to kind of have an idea of a fragrance that I'm interested in. And then if I find it interesting enough, what I would do, I'll go on eBay, and then I'll set a search on it, and then I'll wait for something to come at the price that I want to pay for. Sometimes I'll wait for months and months before I even pull the trigger, or something turns out a good price before I get them. So that's how I hunt for vintage fragrances. I'll be curious to know, for those who do, what do you, how do you find your vintage fragrances? And where do you find the information about what is the first formulation, second formulation, if it's worth getting or not. So here I have Equipage, one of the older bottle styles, and then this one as well. I love Equipage. Um, the Dior's here. This is the summer version, and then this is 0 degrees Dior Fahrenheit. Uh, I wasn't planning. Okay, Monsieur de Givenchy, the EDT, and then the Haute Concentration as well. And then I have this Caron, le troisième homme pour Caron. Let me see if anybody. Robert Millen, thanks for joining. This one is fantastic too. One of the older bottle from Caron, le troisième homme. I think I'm running out of space here. One of the older bottle of Amouage here, but this one at the end of the day, though, I didn't find it to be that different from the current formulation that I have. It is beautiful as a presentation, but I would say it's not worth hunting for. I have the vintage Rokabar with the thing around it here. I'll just leave that, but you have an idea of what it is. I'm just quickly showing what I have here. Azaro pour splash. M7. And then Givenchy Gentleman, one of the older splash bottles. Okay, and then this is the Vetiver by Givenchy, really nice. But when you compare it to some of the modern Vetivers too, it might not be. I don't think it was worth me getting this one because some of the Vetivers that we have nowadays are good. Vetiver is not an expensive material, so you can get a really good representation of this one too nowadays. And then some of the Dior Eau Sauvage, that one is a staple. A lot of people enjoy that because it's easy to wear. One of the older bottles here. And then what is? Let me see. Okay, Yatagan, a vintage Yatagan here. On the next live though, I'm gonna choose maybe favorite five to talk about. And then this is Samsara, beautiful sandalwood floral, the gold trim here, one of the older bottles there. One of the older Boss fragrances. This one, I've tried it, but I did not warm up to it. So is Monsieur Worth from the same house. The name of the house is Worth here. I thought it was interesting, but from what I remember, it smelled vegetal to me. So I didn't enjoy it that much. Of course, where some of the vintage Mitsuku L'Heure Bleu here in this bottle here. Fresher, Eau Sauvage Fresher. This one is discontinued. It's hard to find, but again, this one is a subtle letter with the original Eau Sauvage DNA, but the letter is not that prominent. There is more, but geez. Hold on. And then this one is Extra de Mysore by Evelyn and Crabtree and Evelyn, which is a fantastic sandalwood fragrance. They don't produce it anymore because of the sandalwood, the Mysore sandalwood that they were using in there. Oh yeah, I saw a comment there. Equipage is really nice. I do enjoy that a lot. One of the dark sheepwood that I have is Jean Desprez here. This one is really amazing. A lot of people don't talk about it. I don't know why. It's called Jardinelle. If you can find some of the versions, grab it. If you like a darker, deeper, mossy sheepwood fragrances, then you will love it. Uh, I have Sherazade here by Jean Desprez as well. This one is floral, but has a beautiful, creamy, woody undertone attached to it. Uh, this one I haven't taken it out yet. This is Kuros, the Cologne Sport version. I tried it once. It smelled like hot plastic or pleather, I should say, with the Kuros DNA attached to it. I'm not sure how I feel about that yet. Um, one of the Chanel pour Monsieur, which is really different. I have the new formula of that, but I don't. I like the older formula much better. And then I have again. So for people who have not tried anything from the house of Jean Desprez and you like opulent fragrances with a lot of notes, definitely give them a try. This one is called Versailles Pour Homme, a fantastic fragrance as well, in line with what you get for Bala Versailles. This one is geared towards. I don't like the bottle, but this is a bottle in case you're looking for a reference there. But it's just wonderful. Fragrances from that house are just incredible. Oh, Rukas, Soul of Vetiver, Indian Pure Vetiver. Yes, that's a good one too. And then I have this big box here by Capucci. It's called Punjab. Excellent fragrance as well. I got a big bottle because I didn't want to run out after I was able to sample. I think this is a 200 ml or something like that. But it's a fantastic fragrance there. So those are some of the vintage, according to my own definition, fragrances that I was able to get. And then next week with Brandon, we're gonna be over at his channel, but I'm gonna share the link here so people that are interested. We're gonna go in detail on our top 5 or 10 vintage fragrances. So it'll be interesting to know if you have any favorites. So just going back and catching up on the comments here. Sorry if I'm not ignoring you. I was just sharing some of the vintage fragrances. So I'm going back and then in that. So Ashback is saying for Guerlain vintage info. Okay, Monsieur Guerlain. Yep, that's a good reference point for some of the Guerlain there. Okay, via Wayback Machine. Okay, so they took it down, Monsieur Guerlain. Okay, that's interesting. I didn't know that. Deacon Wright says I wore a Rokabar and you love it. Okay, that's pretty good. I did enjoy it. That's why I went in and bought it. When I bought it, I didn't even know it was this version, the older version there. But I'm glad I got it. So what the fragrance is. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name. I think it's Munawar Shargel. Saying what many fragrances. Yeah, this is over a long period of time though. Like I said, what I do is I will set a search on eBay and then wait for a good price before I jump on anything. Otherwise, I just wait because some of the pricing are just crazy. The other thing too is like some of the fragrances, if you go vintage, you have to be aware that there's the risk of running into flattened top notes when they use a lot of citruses. So keep that in mind. So it's just a risk there. Okay, I'm saying I have a fragrance I bought in Kuwait over 20 years. She'll send you a sample. It's no longer produced. Grande Mariner. So Alara Dillon is talking about a fragrance she got in Kuwait 20 years ago. Wow. That should be interesting. Haitian vetiver or Java vetiver. I forgot which one is better. I would say we're talking about vetiver here. I would say it depends on what scent profile. Some people, when you say vetiver, my wife, for example, the first time I asked her about what she thinks of vetiver, she thought it was a green grassy note. That's it. But then I made her smell bourbon vetiver, Haitian vetiver, vetiver from Paraguay, and she had different reactions to it. Some of them will have a smokier facet attached to them. Some of them will have like a brighter, greener tinge attached to them with a woody, earthy tone attached to them. For example, when I showed her, I had my wife test vetiver from Paraguay. The first thing she said was, "It smells like uh, greens mixed with potato skin." I think it's the earthy sense that she was getting from the vetiver um, that she associated with potato skin. It actually made me laugh because I did not, when I was evaluating that, I did not think of potato skin. But yeah, I can see that. So it really depends on your preference. If you don't like darker, earthier, smoky vetiver, you might not like some of the provenances of those vetivers. Haitian is cleaner, in my opinion. So if you like that those type of vetiver, definitely that will be your favorite. But it's hard to say which one is the best. Will is asking if Punjab is spicy. Yes, and there are so many notes in that fragrance. In the opening, it feels like you can kind of feel disoriented because there's so much going on, and it dries down spicy, slightly darker in nature. It's really well done. Wow, I can't pronounce the name. But someone is asking, have you tried vintage opium extrait de parfum? I've not tried that yet. I think Gunmetal was referring to that before. He ended up picking up a bottle of that, then he thought it was really good, if I'm not mistaken. So it's something that I'm keeping an eye on. It'll be interesting to see. Grand Large Marin, Aloran Dylan. I have to Google it. Let me write that down so I can. Where's my pen? Uh, it's called Grand Large Marin. Oh, it's French, and I'm pronouncing it in English. Good one. Um, Try the vetiver oil recommended by Nikhil. They're amazing. I think he was referring to Rucus, the like very green type. So yeah, I'm yet to order the Rucus and then try that. Well, thank you for joining. So Gunmel saying my opium parfum was good, but oh, more floral. Okay, that's interesting. By Monica Klink. Monique Klink. All right. Sounds good. I think I'm gonna be hey Beyonder, thanks for joining. We're almost done here. We're talking about vintage fragrances, at least the part one. Sorry, Brendan couldn't join. Apparently, there's no way to well, without a third party tool, I guess, to do a dual, like a two people live stream here. So next week we're diving into detail into some of our well top five or top favorite 10 favorite vintage fragrances on Brenda's channel. I'll be adding the link or notification on my channel so you guys are aware of when it's happening. But we're just talking about vintage fragrances, what you consider to be vintage, where, like, why would you even go for vintage fragrances, reason why people get them, how you hunt for them. And then I ended up throwing a couple of fragrances that I have in my collection that I deem vintage by my definition. Catching up here. Barbershop soapy cleanness to it, opening definitely aromatic. So one thing to and you guys can let me know if you're noticing that Most of the vintage fragrances that I've tried, there's such a recurring theme in them to the point where you start to wonder if you're not just buying redundant fragrances. The key theme that I see cutting across is a floral heart. Sometime, most of the time, carnation in it, so it smells a little bit dated, or maybe because they use carnation a lot during those periods, now people are associating with something that is dated. But I get carnation repeating a lot in some of the fragrances, and the base patchouli, amber, slightly leather type of feel attached to it, and then aromatic, citrusy aromatic type of fragrances. A lot of that is a recurring theme in uh, in some of the most of the vintage fragrances that I have in my collection. Yes. So Laura Dillon is saying what is interesting about older fragrances, the natural notes over time become dominant. Okay, such as civet musk. Yes. So those notes tend to come off a lot more later on down the line. I can see that, and then I do enjoy the fragrances that are slightly dirty or filthy, as you guess, warm, sensual type of skin smell to them, and we have a lot of that in some of the vintage fragrances. So definitely that with the mossy feel. That's what I really enjoy in the fragrances, the vintage fragrances. Ashfaq is saying, "Oh yeah, that Ashfaq is saying my dream is to smell vintage JD. That I've not tried. I've seen that. I've never dreamt of having that because it's so rare. Most of the people have talked about this one. They say it's really expensive. Maybe a miracle, then I'll be able to find it. But yeah, I can see why you'd be willing to wait for that one. Sounds outstanding from what I've heard from other people. Decal, right? Look for me coming to Radio Collection. I don't have that much. Some of the people on Base Note are really into vintage fragrances. I mean, their collections are insane. For me, I think unless I find something that is really different from what I already have here, is going to be hard for me to keep adding. There are some like Balenciaga that I really need to pick up. I heard is a great patchouli dominant fragrance. I don't have that yet. For example, I might pick that up later on if I find a good price. Oh, Beyonder is asking, will you officially release Vertu de Verre? Yes. So actually, I already have it sitting. Yesterday was on the magnetic stir there, just mixing the ingredients. It is already, well, the concentrate is done and is diluted. I have to wait. When I did the prototype, I waited 3 months for it to be ready. 1 month for the concentrate to sit, and then 2 months to set an alcohol. So it's gonna be probably be ready by mid-March. And then for people that are not aware of what Beyonder is talking about, he's talking about one of the fragrances that I made a while back, and I ended up sending the samples to somebody, and then the person loved it. He loves vetiver, and he ended up requesting a bottle. And then he made a post about it, and other people that love vetiver were interested. So I actually had a couple of people contact me and ask me if they can prepay so I can buy the ingredients and actually make it if I'm not planning on releasing it. So I decided I'm going to release it. So it's ready. It should be ready by mid-March. And is vetiver fragrance. There's three types of vetiver in it, and then some. I don't want to say florals because it doesn't have like a really floral character attached to it. It's all about the vetivers, but I'm using, for example, cypress. I'm using yuzu to accentuate some of the facets of the vetivers there. But I'm using three shades of vetiver to give it a little bit of depth there, and that'll be coming in March. Yeah, so it's going to be released soon. Thanks for asking me, Under. Somebody loves carnation. Most people think it's old fashioned, but I do enjoy that in fragrances when it's well used. Beyond there, that would be too kind of you. Let's see if I missed anything here. Oh, Ashfaq. Okay, that's an interesting association. Ashfaq is saying it's just a speculation. Carnation is probably less fashionable since it is somehow related to funeral. Okay, now you have that stuck in my head. I'm gonna be self conscious when I'm wearing that. um, okay, that's an interesting connection there. I didn't know that. At least from a cultural standpoint, I wasn't aware of that. That's an interesting piece of info. Thank you for letting me know that. I'm curious to know if anybody else is um, having that same association, or at least can agree with him. Oh, Allura Dylan. No, okay, so I'll contact you. Actually, it'll be interesting if you can give me feedback. I mean, I was learning from you guys, so and I'm still learning from you guys. So it'll be interesting to see what you think if I've been listening properly during your lives and stuff like that. So that'd be great. So I will contact you and then we'll go from there, if you don't mind. Patrick, thank you. Yeah, carnation offers spicy notes that are lovely. Yes, and that's why I love it. If it is used properly, um, it can it can add something really interesting to fragrances. Ensemble Chypre has a beautiful use of carnation right to the heart. Okay, okay, I need to try the Ashfaq. Is I think gunmetal or Ashfaq. I think Ensemble Chypre is temporary. Is no longer available until the next batch. I think. I do have a sample set though. I still need to go back. But Gunmetal, thank you for saying that. So, Gunmetal is saying from my culture, chrysanthemum is associated with funerals and religious prayers. It is different across different cultures. Yes, that's why I wasn't aware of it, at least culturally, because in my culture, well, not that people are talking too much about fragrances, but yeah, the carnation. It was interesting to learn that in some cultures is associated with that, and gunmetal is adding something interesting too. This is awesome. I'm learning a lot of stuff here. Thanks, guys, for sharing off the site. Yeah, Brandon, exactly. So you know what happened, Brandon? I went when I was finally ready to buy Oram Dankor and then Ensemble Chypre here. I went to the website and I typed it and I couldn't find it. So I scrolled through all his offerings and I couldn't find it. I freaked out for a second there. Um, before I went online on Basil trying to figure out what is happening. And I think I saw a comment saying that it was sold out, but nothing mentioned about it coming back. So for a bit there, I was freaked out, and then I think later on, Gunmetal did mention that they were coming back as just temporarily out of stock. And then in the same thread, I was made aware that is it Julia? Julia? There's another one that he recently created, where people are saying that is actually a good one, um, like a better than Oram Danko or something that is along the lines of it, really complex and lovely. So I'll have to check that out later. I'll have to find the name though. Um, oh yes, Waft from the Loft. I love the interaction that they have. It actually is a change that we have two people actually doing the review so that you can actually see difference in opinions and stuff like that, and then they go back and forth, is a lot more, is a lot easier to watch because it doesn't feel like you're just watching one person just talk. It seems more like a conversation, and then you feel part of it. At least that's why I enjoy their channel a lot. And then they do like kind of obscure and then challenging fragrances, which is in line with what I enjoy too. So their channel is actually really good. And it's the same thing with Alora Dylan, your channel, you and Vivian there, going back and forth and then going through the process. Um, it is a lot more interesting to watch than one person just teaching. And you guys have a really good sense of humor, so it never feels like it is too long. Going back. Thank you for the compliment there. Wait a second, Brandon. What? You serious? Oram Diancourt is gone? Wait a second. You're messing with me. I think you're messing with me. There's no way he's gonna discontinue, or he doesn't have the materials to make it happen. What the heck? Jesus. I guess that's what happens when you wait too long. Crap. Sorry. Hey, Kate, thank you for joining. It's been such a long time. I hope you're doing well. Oh, yes. So I'm going to be adding, for the samples, the shipping is okay, but for full bottles, I would not like at the current rate, shipping rate that I have for the current shipping rate that I have for full bottles for international. I wouldn't recommend that because it's not going to be worth it. It's too expensive. I'm talking with somebody at DHL. Um, Tracy did mention that another company was using DHL and they have affordable shipping rates. So I'm looking into that to see if I can get a better shipping rate for full bottles. But I'm going to be adding the samples internationally available because of the shipping is much more affordable for that one. But for bottles, I would say we'll have to wait a little bit until I get a good shipping rate. Oh, okay, Kate, thank you for the name. Let me write that down. As a retailer in Australia, is okay. .com. Okay, I will give it a try. Thank you, Kate. Oh, and let okay, so that's a good less weight, I guess, and then yeah, some of the regulations too. Allure Dylan, that's actually a good idea. Well noted. Thanks. Oh, cool. That's good to know. Okay, sounds good. I'll get in touch with them and see if they're interested. EMS. Oh, so Ashfaq is asking if I'll be able to send it to Bangladesh using EMS. I should be able to do that. That will be hold on. EMS. I've not looked into that, but thought that was in Europe. I'll have to take a look at that and then see if it's um, feasible. Oh yeah, Allure Dylan. So yes, actually, the I think you had also for your samples, you had like a little like an envelope that is sealed. The way you send those, that was actually really creative there, so that you don't have to mail like samples that can leak and stuff like that. That's a really good medium to send things samples to people. Um, and then yeah, I'm sure I'm repeating myself here, but even if you're not making fragrances, you need to go. subscribe to Allura Dylan. The reason why I'm saying that is because the way they're doing it is fun interaction, but it's not how do I say that? It's not overly rigid. So, as somebody who's just into the fragrance hobby, if you're interested in learning some of the things and how things are created and stuff like that, I would say it is something that you can do. Go there, watch it, and then you will learn an extra thing or two. Uh, well, better than before you watch them. I did learn before I even decided to start my fragrance line. I was, as a reviewer, getting familiar with some of the notes and then some of the practices in the industry. I learned a lot of that there. So it'd be interesting if you go there, subscribe it, and kind of follow. Well, reminder to go into their lives. Sometime I'm at work and I see a live come up. I'm like, shit, I can't watch it now, and I have to go back and watch it because you can ask questions and then they actually answer the questions. So, which is pretty cool. Oh, no worries, Alan. Laura, I'm trying to stir people to channels that offer a lot more information than just kind of rambling through what a fragrance smells like and compliments and stuff like that. It gives variety for people that are looking into fragrance reviews. But it's fun though. They're long, but it's fun. What I would do is I would just put headphones on, and then I'll have my phone with me, and I would just go around the house doing chores, and yeah. And by the time I'm done with my chores, I don't feel like I did anything, which is good because I was distracted by listening to you guys. So that's cool. And then there's not a lot of dead space in your streams either, so it's not bad. Okay. Oh, wow. It's been an hour and 22 minutes. Thank you guys so much for joining and making this fun. I love that everybody was able to contribute. It was interesting getting the answers to some of the questions that we had at the beginning of the stream. And then I see people interacting in the stream here is really cool to see that. So thank you, everybody, for making this one fun. And thank you for making the time to join. And then I'm going to be updating, I'm going to be posting for the next live here where we're going to give you a lot more detailed information on some of our favorite vintage fragrances. So you can come in and discuss some of your favorites there and share with us so we can look into them as well. Vivian, thank you. All right. Thank you guys, and then have a great weekend. Take care, and then bye.